Well, this here is the all-new Maruti Suzuki Grand Vitara. It's a car which rivals the Creta, Seltos and the Harrier. It's also a car which gets a very posh face. You also get Suzuki's all-grip off-roading system as well as full hybrid and mild hybrid engines with this car. You also get a very wide aperture to enter and exit the car and massive amount of space in the second row. Well, you also get a lot of cool features on this car like bird's eye view camera, automatic headlamps, a huge touchscreen, multiple airbags, cruise control and of course cooled front seats. So is this car really a worthy opponent to established rivals like the Kia Seltos, Hyundai Creta as well as the Tata Harrier and even its own cousin the Toyota Hyryder? Well, we'll find out on the show today. But if you want to know about those cars, you can check out the links in the box below or click over here on the pop-out banner to see my full in-depth video reviews of those cars separately. Anyways, let's start with this Grand Vitara and let's start with the interiors now. I'm sure by now all of you are aware that Woodmo are the online expert when it comes to spare parts, and the best point is that they have the spare parts for all vehicles available in India. So even if your car is out of production now, maybe you have a large generation model, even then they have the spare part available, they have the entire catalog, and the best point is that they have the same spare part from a host of different component makers, which gives you great flexibility in the pricing overall. So check them out today, check out the app, it's available both for iOS as well as Android devices, and also check out the website for the latest schemes as well as offers. Well, so the Grand Vitara is available in 4 different options. You of course get a no hybrid version, which is just the engine. Then of course you get the mild hybrid, which is this version. Then you get the strong hybrid, which will drive later. And then of course you get the all grip version. And in all versions there are some differences, but the basic architecture of the interior is the same. And of course the full hybrid, the strong hybrid, it gets a completely digital display for the gauges. This one and the other versions get analog gauges, and the instrumentation, the center console design, it's very similar to the one we've already seen on the Baleno as well as the Brezza, but that's not a bad thing because it's a very good touchscreen to use. The system is very nice to operate, the sound quality is very good, and the gauges look very crystal clear, very sharp gauges, so it's not a bad thing. Lots of information between them. There's a digital gauge between them which gives you a lot of information like the current torque you're using, the power you're using, how much time you stop the car, the display for the timing as well as for the G-forces, and of course display also for what kind of power, is the battery power assisting it or is only running on petrol. So those things are available in the middle display, and of course over here on the touch screen you again get the energy flow meter as well as a lot of other information like how much fuel is left and stuff like that, what music is playing, and of course you can also use it for the bird's eye view camera, which really is the big highlight of this car. It's a very accurate camera, the definition is very high def, and it just looks fantastic. In case you're stuck or you're parking in a very tight space, then this camera will show you all the edges of the car and give you a very genuine kind of feedback of how far your car is from a distance from maybe a store or something else. So it's very safe to operate, and also for people who live in buildings which have very tight parking spaces, this is really going to be a major boon for all of you. Apart from that, what else is good? The seat comfort is exceptionally good. I think this is the best seat now compared to its rivals. The support for your back is very good. Side bolsters really help you out in case you're pushing this car into corners, and of course the support for your tall and lanky legs like me is good, and the seat of course adjusts for height, and the steering wheel also adjusts for rake as well as for reach, so it's really easy to find a good and comfortable driving position for yourself. And when you sit up high, you can see the edges of the bonnet, so that's also something which is nice for people who are graduating from a smaller car. Maybe you've just sold your Brezza and upgraded from your Brezza into this car, so for people like that I think it's a very good place to be in. What you'll also like of course is the quality of materials. The quality definitely is good. You have a little bit of brown over here, a little bit of silver, and of course grey, and it works quite well. Stitching also looks good, and just in general the ambience of the car is quite good. What you'll also like is the rich features list: cruise control, multiple airbags, ESP, automatic start stop, a huge panoramic sunroof, and of course as I said you also get this bird's eye view camera, and HUD display on some of the variants is available as well. What you'll also appreciate about this car is of course the fact that storage places are quite good. The doors are large enough to house those big 1 liter bottles from your home, and also lots of places to keep your odds and ends, place over here to keep your cell phone. There's also a specialist place to keep your sunglasses, and of course the controls here for the sunroof and the glove box is also decent in terms of its shape as well as its size. So no really big complaints about this car. In general, the fit and finish is good, the comfort is good, the features list is quite good, and as I said, no major reasons to complain inside this car. One area, of course, where I think some people might complain is the key of the car is very similar to cars which are half the price of this car. So I think that maybe Suzuki should have given you a slightly fancier key, because it's an expensive car compared to its rivals or some other cars in the same stable. So a fancy key would have been nicer. But then again, Maruti Suzuki are the masters of cost cutting, and when they cut cost, they ultimately deliver a competitive price car to you. So it's also not a bad thing. And one more area where you can see cost cutting is evident is in the power window buttons. Now this is something that Suzuki has been doing for many years, not only in India, across the globe, and this is how they save costs, and this is exactly how they deliver value to the customer. So no big complaints, because at the end of the day, you're saving all that cash. Well, so now let's quickly show you the back seat of this car, because the back seat is important. And as you can see, it's a nice and wide opening door. The sound also is pretty reassuring. It shuts with a very authoritative thud, so that's something which should give you confidence. What you'll also like is the space inside the car, and this sunroof means that you get a lot of light inside the car, so the cabin feels very bright and airy. Even on a day like today where it's very cloudy, the cabin is feeling nice, and even though there are a lot of dark plastics, it will not bother you because there's plenty of light coming in from the sunroof, so it does feel pretty large. The door bins can house those big 1 liter bottles, so that's also a big boon. And there's also a small pocket over here on both sides, so you can keep some files and your iPad devices. Once you're bored listening to them, you can just put them over here. One thing I need to say before telling you about the back seat is that you should always belt up. Yes, it doesn't matter if you're traveling alone, you're traveling for a small distance, you're traveling, just for a couple of kilometers, always belt up, and always check people who are sitting inside with you on this side or in the front, and ask them "Pehni kya?" and tell them to wear a seatbelt, because this is the first safety device in any car. You can have multiple airbags, you can have ABS and stuff like that, but unless you're not belted up, all those other devices are completely useless. So always remember to belt up inside your car. Anyways, now let's talk about the seat comfort in general. You can move around the back seat a little bit. You can move it around a little bit. The backrest can be moved, but even then, even at its furthermost position, I think it's a little too inclined. Would have been better if it had a little better recline. It's not bad, I'm just nitpicking right now, but I think it would have been slightly better if it went a little further back. Other than that, what else is good about the car? It's generally a wide car at the back. You definitely have a lot of space, and as I said, large glass area, which really makes this car's cabin feel nice, bright and very airy. Well, so before showing you the boot of this car, let me just talk about this huge bar of light. I think this really looks very cool, and right now it's not very dark, so it's not very visible, but when it gets a little darker, when it's evening time, this beam of light, this bar of light looks really cool, and I think this is the big highlight of the whole design package of the Grand Vitara. Also, this huge lettering over here makes this car stand out from a sea of other SUVs out there on the road. Now let's talk about the boot of the car. All you need to do is just open it like this. Well, so as you can see, in terms of the overall size and shape, it's nice and square, but I think in terms of volume, its other rivals have a slight advantage in terms of the overall volume. It doesn't look as big and as generous as its other rivals. That said, the big benefit is that you can easily slide in and slide out stuff from here, because there's absolutely no loading sill, so to speak about. So that's something which is quite good. And of course, you get some small compartments over here where you can keep your odds and ends. So there's one over here and one compartment over here as well, where you can keep those odd and ends. And if you think that the boot on the mild hybrid tech is small, then the full hybrid version is even smaller, because the battery pack takes up some more space over here. Anyways, that's enough of the boot now. Let's jump inside, drive this car around and show you how it is to drive. Well, so let's quickly tell you about the Grand Vitara and its driving bits. Now, we've driven this car all the way from Udaipur to Delhi, so we've driven it for 650 odd kilometers, and also we drove this car in Udaipur, shooting it, so around 40-50 kilometers over there. So in totality, over 700 kilometers covered in this car, and I have to say that I've got a pretty good idea of its performance in terms of the driving bits, thanks to driving it so much. Now, how does it drive? Remember, it comes with a 1.5 engine, and there are options to choose from. There's a non-hybrid version, there's a mild hybrid version, there's a full hybrid version which we drove down, and there's, of course, there is the 4x4 version. So all of them are slightly different in terms of the driving bits, and they feel slightly different. Now, which is my favorite of the pick? Well, I would say if you're on a bit of a tight budget, then buy the mild hybrid automatic. The automatic, the reason why I'll suggest the automatic is simply because of the extra 6th gear that it gives, and the convenience, of course, that it gives. Now, having the 6th gear means that in terms of the overall fuel efficiency, the engine feels very flexible, and that's something you will really enjoy when you drive on the highway. When doing speeds in excess of 100 kph, the engine is spinning at about 2100 rpm, which makes the cabin well isolated. And apart from the cabin being well isolated, you also feel that the engine is a little more smoother. It's not revving so high, so it feels quite nice and smooth. This engine has already been tried and tested for fuel efficiency, reliability, and stuff like that already. We've seen it on the Brezza, we've seen it on some other cars in the Maruti Suzuki range. And having that extra battery pack, even in the mild hybrid version, means that you get an extra bit of torque available when you want to get that quick acceleration move done, especially against slow-moving vehicles. So that's something which a lot of buyers will enjoy, and that little bit of torque, that extra kick that you get, definitely works well when you're driving this car, and on the highway it definitely seems better. How is the gearbox? The automatic that I'm driving, and I have driven mostly, is quite nice. The smooth shifting pattern is quite good, and both upshifts and downshifts are quite decent. And this is a car basically for people who are sensible and sober drivers. If you're someone who wants to buy a very enthusiastic kind of car, performance oriented car, then some rivals offer you turbo engines, and that is the kind of car you should go for. This one, though, as I said, with 104 bhp, is just adequately powered. You will never feel underpowered in this car, especially on the highway, and even the city. It is quite decent in terms of performance. You'll never feel underpowered, underwhelmed. That word you cannot associate with this car. It's not very exciting to drive, but it's neither too boring as well, but it does everything quite well. The steering wheel, it's nice and light, so buyers who drive themselves a lot in the city will appreciate it. It's not as communicative as the Maruti Suzuki S-Cross's steering, because I think the S-Cross had the best steering in the current range of Maruti cars, and of course the S-Cross is no longer on sale. It's not as communicative or as direct as that steering wheel, but it's not bad either. It's just maybe half a step behind, and it's very similar to the steering wheel on the Brezza, and it's quite nice and light to operate as well. So that's something which a lot of buyers will enjoy about this car as well. Other than that, visibility is pretty good all across. You of course get the bird's eye view camera, and the other good point is that if you're upgrading from a Brezza, or if you're upgrading from maybe a Desire, or you had a Ciaz with you and you want to upgrade from that, this car feels just perfect as an upgrade, because you get very familiar design, the S logos of course there, but it feels like a very natural upgrade from all those cars, because it just drives so well and feels much bigger as well. So these are things you need to keep in mind. The ride quality is also pretty well sorted. When we were driving on the highway doing speeds of about 100 and 110 kph, we felt this car was quite good and felt very stable and reassuring on the highway. Sometimes though, those badly made potholes in ruts, some of them, very few of them, might just filter in. Not all of them, but once in a while you might just have some filter in, because the suspension is slightly on the firmer side, slightly, but it's not uncomfortable. It's not something which is a deal breaker. So these are things you need to keep in your mind before you make a buying decision about the Grand Vitara. Overall though, a pretty impressive package. If you want to buy a car in this segment and you don't want to buy a diesel, then this is a car you should definitely keep on the top of your shortlist. I will stop the car, give you some report, and then wrap up this video. Well, so overall, what's my final verdict for the Grand Vitara? Well, it's a car with which you can't really build a case against, and the reason for that is that this car seems to have it all. It has a great list of features, it looks very good, it's a serious off-road, it can take off-roading duties without any hesitation whatsoever, and that's one area where it's got a big advantage over its main rivals. Apart from that, it's very fuel efficient, and being a Nexa product means that after-sales servicing will really offer you great peace of mind. So what I'm essentially trying to say is that you just can't go wrong with the Grand Vitara, and you just can't build a case against it. This is the new king of the mid-size SUV segment. So bye for now, and thanks so much for watching.